You can see also the PowerPoint, yeah?
Yeah.
So great. So many thanks for this introduction and also for organizing this great conference. As you can see, I'm going to talk about the evidence of the end of the Kura-Araxes period with a focus on Iranian sites and have some touch on some other sites in the Araxes basin. So. At the end of the glorious days of the Kura-Araxes era in the middle of the 3rd millennium BCE, most of the well-established diasporic settlements and those in the core area of this tradition, after around 1,000 years, endure a different form of societal structure. This period, as you can see here, is mainly introduced in various literature as the early Kurgan, the end of this period, introduced as the early Kurgan period. Surprisingly, although the early Kurgan period was the topic of different contributions, the end of the Kura-Araxes period in itself was really a topic of inquiry. Fortunately, unlike other scenarios of the end of the traditions, the abandonment of individual sites and the end of the Kura-Araxes tradition was not interpreted as the collapse of the Kura-Araxes culture or tradition. Ironically, it doesn't seem that the archaeologist was fed up with collapse scenarios and did a favor to the Kura-Araxes people not to include them in the collapse club, but instead made a decentralized political organization of these communities. Lack of correlation with other historical, environmental, and ecological events gave them no interest to call the end of this tradition as a collapse of something in the sense of crisis. Although we have here today, and yesterday, that some scholars actually have tried to correlate this end with the K.2 event. The kernel of this argument is thinking about the end. What does it even mean regarding the Kura-Araxes cultural tradition? Ending of what? What did change that we interpreted as end of them? Is it all just about the abandonment of settlement, the settled site, or beyond that? Do we see the same end scenario for all sites in the core area or diaspora and in the same time span? Shall we consider it as a global event like many climate change collapse scenarios, or different trajectories were in play? As you may guess, we do not have rigid answers or enough evidence to handle these questions at the current stage of our knowledge. Conceptualizing the end and reviewing the evidence at hand from different areas, however, could be a good start for this long journey. As MAZIAR urged us decades ago, we should get down to the basics, and as an initial step to speak about any crisis, end, collapse, or thresholds, first we should establish the character of the question itself. So to speak a common language regarding the definition of collapse or crisis, Catherine Kouchtourlou and Catherine Marot in their book, with the collaboration of other attendances in their conference, considered these four forms for end and gave this definition, as you can see in the slide, for collapse, crisis, break, and change. Organizing a conference with the topic of the end of the Kura-Araxes and our interest to take part and discuss this issue demonstrate that there is yet no explicit understanding of the end scenario, as we have seen also at the end yesterday and today. As a first step in getting rid of this causal relationship and this view that considers societies as helpless victims of a train of climatic circumstances, we should initially change our mindset about the end. See it not as an event, but as a process. I'm arguing that. So evaluating a change requires comprehensive data, not just from one site or area, but rather from a wide geographical and temporal perspective. Hence, in the following review, I concentrate on the sites that the evidence of the final phase of the Kura-Araxes period in excavated sites is available. The main focus, as you can see, is on the Iranian sites. However, to complete this picture, the evidence of other sites with comprehensive data is presented as well. This bottom-up approach will compensate for the shortcomings of generalization and postulate various episodes of the final phase of this tradition in different parts of its autonomy. Here you can see the base of this analytical data that you can see that I would focus on the Araxes basin on 4 sites, Nader Tepesi, Kohne Tepesi, Kur Tepe Niye Jorfa, and also Kohneshar. and also in Urmia Lake Basin and Yannick and Golin, as we have already heard from Jeff's presentation, also Mitchell Rothman. And I will have a touch on Sosyok and also Shengabi. So in Iran, the Araxes basin yielded the main corpus of the evidence regarding the end phase, from the excavation. And as you can see, the evidence of the end or the final phase of the Kura-Araxes period is yielded from 3 sites: the Nadir Tepesi, Kohne Tepesi, and also Kultepe. So during the following slides, you will see this science, which designate actually different scenarios. The first one corresponds to the destruction, mainly by fire. The second one designates corresponds to the replacement, either with a different tradition, for example, Golden 3 or Urmiyever or whatever. And the third one corresponds to the continuation after a short gap, like Mart, Popi, or Bedeni, or something related to them. And the last one corresponds to the gap, actually. Okay. So Nadir Tepesi, you can see the location of the site. It's located in this part, in the Moran steppe, along the Araxes basin, actually. I was hoping that Karim would talk about it, but I did not prepare so much information about this site. Just to note that we have Kura-Araxes 2 and Kura-Araxes 3 in this site, and afterwards, after the Kura-Araxes 3, the end of this period is presumably accompanied by destruction and conflagration. And afterwards, we have kind of middle or late Bronze Age deposits, which you can see the pottery here. They are actually varnished. We have a varnish decoration on them. So I'm not sure if you should call it Bedeni, as Giorgio today said that in Break Al-Debi we have this kind of varnish decoration, or we should consider it as an early literality. So we are not sure yet about this. So the second site that I'm going to talk about for the first time actually is Kohne Tepesi. This site was excavated by Ali Zalleri and Bayram in Arlari in 2006, and in 2007 by Ali Zalleri and myself. The site actually contains the end of the Kura-Araxes 2, the final actually, and deposit of the Kura-Araxes 2, and mainly the Kura-Araxes 3, and also post Kura-Araxes period. So you can see the area that we have the evidence of these periods from the excavation. As you can, you can see in the previous slide, the site is located in the Khoda Farin Plain, and it's very close to Kohne Paska Tepesi. So here you can see that it's just 100 meters away from Kohne Paska Tepesi. So it's very close actually to these sites. As you may know, Kohne Paska actually was abounded during Kura-Araxes 2, and interestingly, Kohne Tepesi was settled for the first time actually during the, as I said, last phase of the Kura-Araxes 2, and mainly during the Kura-Araxes 3. Yeah. So here you can see the stratigraphy of the site. Unfortunately, as you can see in these photos above, the extensive Islamic period burials and also the Arsacid or Parthian architecture disturbed the final phases of the Kura-Araxes period. And it is likely that the remains of the uppermost parts of this period actually are removed by later constructions. The evidence of the final phase, from the safe context in the occupation area came from the pits, after the occupational level and architecture, just came from these pits, this intrusive actual pits. We had also scattered stones. We have found over all the sites, but as I said, due to later destructions, none of them actually belong to the safe context. So only these pottery actually sheds were found in these disturbed deposits that could be dated to, again, post-Kura-Araxes phase. Maybe, as you can see, they are again like Nadir Tepesi decorated with this varnish decoration. So I don't know if we should again consider them as a Bedeni or maybe early literality. If you have any comment on that, I would be very happy to hear. So As I said, the site dated to the end of the Kura-Araxes II and was mainly occupied during the Kura-Araxes III period around 2600. And we have 6-meter deposits of these periods actually at the site. Most potteries, especially in phase 1 and 2 of the site, are comparable to Eastern Georgia, especially the site of Sociocultural level A, as we have also heard about it yesterday in Elena's presentation. Here, I want to take your attention to one specific actually pottery. You can see here a form that has not such a kind of sophisticated decoration, and actually you can see here. Interestingly, I have found the parallel of these sheds in Sociocultural, and there are lots of other forms in phase 1 and 2 of Kura-Araxes that are comparable with this site actually. I didn't see the photos of this shed in Sociocultural, and just based on the published material, I think that these actually published sheds are the same as these ones. So if I'm right in comparing this material together, Kura-Araxes and later Elena Roba, based on her brief actually examination, mentioned that this level should be dated to the multi-copy stage at the latest. Above this level at Kura-Araxes, however, there is a 5-meter deposit with 2 extensive architectural levels. And this kind of pottery, as you can see here, that clearly it's Kura-Araxes. So if this pottery comparison is correct, either Sociocultural dating and its distribution to multi-copy should be reevaluated, or maybe we should revisit the definition of multi-copy as a different tradition from Kura-Araxes, or I don't know, this 5-meter occupational deposit with 2 phases of architecture and loads of black burnished potteries with dimple decoration or Lachtavan handle at Kura-Araxes do not correspond to what we know from the multi-copy. So here in this slide, you can see the final phases at the site, what survived actually from the later destructions. As you can see, different pits cut, for instance, part of the, you can see clearly here, part of the actually the Kura-Araxes III wall foundation. And these pits were scattered across the site. Unfortunately, the pottery sheds inside them, which you can see here, were not of help for dating these pits. Based on the in situ and the de facto remains inside the houses, we should say that more likely the houses were intentionally abandoned and the occupants left nothing behind but some grindstones, mortars, and dead trash. There is no evidence of destruction or violence at the final phase of this final phase of the Kura-Araxes period at the site. It seems that after this abandonment, the site was revisited with short-lived offshots across the site. So although most of the evidence of the final phase is removed, the site yielded fascinating actually proof of the post-Kura-Araxes period. 2 burial chambers were found during the excavation. Here you see the tomb 1, based on one cable dating of an animal bone inside the tomb. It dated to 2700 BCE. The form of the pottery and the decoration, like here, you can see the dimple and inside decoration verify this dating, which belong to the Kura-Araxes period. The structure of the burial chamber, a rectangular mud brick structure with 1 descendant inside it, and its grave goods and animal meat offerings is not so common among the Kura-Araxes burials, and so far we didn't find any comparable type. I would be very grateful if you know any parallel to this actual burial. Tomb 2 is part of the evidence of the post-Kura-Araxes period, which is the focus actually of the seminar at the site. It's a rectangular mud brick tomb in northeast-southwest orientation. The tomb was constructed in 3 mud brick rows. On the inner side of the southwest and southeast walls of the tomb, we can see a mud brick platform. It was more likely used as a place for grave goods. The association between the tomb and residential area is not apparent. However, it seems that at the time of the establishment of this burial chamber, its northwestern side, as you can see here, cut the Kura-Araxes III domestic architecture. It appears that the Kura-Araxes architecture was ruined at the time of establishing the tomb, and they cut even part of the stone foundation of one of the walls. The south and southwestern side of the tomb, like the previous one, is built in the natural soil of the hill. An Islamic period grave, which was located 40 centimeters above the tomb, cut the upper parts of this grave. Hence, it's challenging to reconstruct the initial condition of the upper level of the tomb. A single flex burial, 35-45 years old, individual is found in this tomb. The burial includes 9 grave goods, including ceramic vessels and metal artifacts. Ceramic vessels encompass 5 objects: 3 storage jars, as you can see here, and 2 cups, and you can see here. So one of the jars has 2 knobs in relief, as you can see, on opposite side of the body. Jars 2 is also decorated with 4 knobs in relief with the decorative, as you can see, Nakhchivan lock, and also a Nakhchivan handle, which is kind of characteristic of the Kura-Araxes culture. And the other one, as you can see here, has also 2 knobs. So the forms of the pottery actually corresponds to the mold copy as we have here yesterday and today. But we know that this knob decoration is more actually known from the Bedeni traditions. A gold spring also, as you can see, gold spiral ring also were found on the neck inside the grave. So in the Kura-Araxes sites in Iran, at least, no gold artifacts have been so far actually reported. Such a ring is also very well known from the Southern Caucasus during the 4th and 3rd millennium BC, and all of them actually have been found in the funerary context. So this inventory of this grave, the inventory of this grave is generally comparable with the grave goods of Hassansu one grave. However, there are some differences between actually them. So regarding the carbon dating, I have tried to model through the Bayesian model the available carbon dating from Komne-Polska and also Taipei. As you can see, unfortunately, we do not have lots of carbon dating, and still more carbon dating is demanding for the site. But you can see that for the establishing of the actually phase 1 at Taipei, you can see that started roughly in 2700, but the establishment of the occupation actually started a little bit later in 2600, based on available actually carbon dating. And as you can see, the location of the other one, we have the other actual carbon dating from this phase, which dated back to the 2400 roughly. But you can see that we have another occupational level above it. So still, yeah, we should do more carbon dating on the side. But based on the current available dating, we can see that the dating of this final phase is back to roughly 2400, 2000, yeah, something like this. So now we go to Kultepe near Jorfa. You can see here the location of the site. So we have some carbon datings of this site as well. So from period 4, which corresponds to the Kura-Araxes phase, only 1 radiocarbon is available, which dated actually to 2800 to 2600. And the excavator mentioned the 2000, Akbar Abedi mentioned the 2600 to 2500 as the end date of the Kura-Araxes phase. And this actually at Kultepe, after the Kura-Araxes phase during 2500 and 2200, a distinct Middle Bronze Age pottery, the so-called Urumia ware, actually appeared. So the Urumia ware strata, as Akbar Abedi mentioned in his article, directly preceded by the Kura-Araxes occupation level at the site without any gap in the occupation. Another critical finding highlighted by the excavator is the appearance of jars with Nakhchivan lock along with Urumia, typical Urumia ware in one locus. This is important since it demonstrates a type of coexistence or continuation of early Bronze Age tradition in Middle Bronze Age, which is mentioned by the excavator. Note 4C, a circular structure also is unearthed from this phase. If we take the Komne-Tepe dating actually into account, the Kura-Araxes phase lasted till, as I said, to 2400. This phase is somehow comparable with this phase at Kultepe. Although I'm not sure that how reliable is this earlier dating for Urumia ware at Kultepe Jorfa. So the next site is Yannick. I'm not going to talk, as Jeffrey actually extensively talk about this site, just to note that after the early Bronze Age 3 period or Kura-Araxes 3 period, as Jeff mentioned, we have a gap and the site is deserted for some centuries. So the other site is Golden Taipei. The Kura-Araxes phase ended around 2700, and in 2600 we see the Golden 3 pottery assemblage, which is absolutely different from the Kura-Araxes ones. So it's yet not so clear if there is a hiatus between these two phases. What is evident is that the Golden 3 occupants, as Mitchell Rothman actually wrote in his chapter in the Golden Book, that the Golden 3 occupants actually cut the, as you can see here, cut the standing walls of building 3 and filled in building 9. So in the earliest Golden 3 phase, I mean this 3-6, Black burnished pottery continued, but just they constitute 6% of the assemblage, as Mitchell wrote in his book actually. So surprisingly, most of the known andirons are also known from this level Golden 3 phase, and even later from phase of Golden 3 too. So like Kultapeniye Jorfa, this phase is also contemporary with Kohne Tepesi and the rectangular building phase at Yannick Taipei. So going behind the political boundary, I will have now touch on the two other sites, Sosyuk and Shengabit. Both of them are located along the Araxes Basin. So in Sos after 2500, in the level of 5D, which is considered as early Bronze Age 3, unlike the previous phase, the 5C, there is a lack of coherent architecture, and most parts of the area are characterized by pits, as we have also in Kohne Tepesi. Although Sargon argued that the late Kura-Araxes period in Erzurum extends into the 2nd millennium BCE, he articulated that around 2500 BCE, a cultural transformation happened in this region, which he described as a new age for Sosyuk. The late Kura-Araxes period was accompanied by a range of bell-shaped pits and graves. He asserted that during this period, the northeastern part of the site changed from a residential area to one distinguished by burials and many pits. The remains of the period 4B revealed multi-room buildings resonating the Kura-Araxes houses in the Erzurum. These final phases, especially phase 4A-B during the Middle Bronze Age at the site, are composed of the mingled Kura-Araxes illustrated Mars copy. He perfectly designated that the houses that contain Mars copy and Bedini artifacts are Kura-Araxes in the plan. So Shengabit is the other side that Mitchell talked about it actually exclusively and extensively. So the end date at this site is also considered as 2400, and after both the inhabitants still settled the site, and the evidence of the Bedouin tradition is also yielded from this site. So now, the synthesization of this data. So the crucial transformation in social organization, subsistence economy, and material culture after the end of the Kura-Araxes tradition raised this challenge that whether we should consider the early Kurgan or March copy Bedouin tradition as a moment of rupture or continuity, as Smith asserted decades ago. As we have heard yesterday, and also we have heard yesterday and today, we see a pervasive abandonment in many areas. And we have also seen Iran, it was the case, I mean, in many sites, in many areas around the lake, in the core area and in diaspora. We see different, however, we see a different scenarios of continuity besides rupture, the continuity of the material culture besides rupture and abandonment. In some sites, we see the coexistence of some material culture with new different traditions like Godin, or the connections between Kura-Araxes and subsequent traditions, namely the Mars copy Bedouin tradition, based on the elements of the ceramic repertoire. On the other hand, although the ceramic repertoire designates a continuity, burials and kurgans designate a significant transformation in social organization during the middle and the third quarter of the 3rd millennium BCE. However, Tomb 1 of Kohne Tepesi, which dated back to the end of the Kura-Araxes 2 and Kura-Araxes 3, beside Kohne Shahar and the other sites, may resonate with an earlier science and herald of this transformation at the end of this Kura-Araxes 2 and Kura-Araxes 3 phase. So regarding the socio-cultural transformation, in the middle of the 3rd millennium BCE, Sagona decades ago articulated that these cultural shifts flag the onset of a new set of beliefs, values, and ideas that gradually changes the character of highland communities. He argued that these shifts designate the end of the Kura-Araxes cultural tradition. In this sense, the end here does not just mean the abandonment of settlements, vanishing the Kura-Araxes pottery style or material culture, but its metamorphosis and integration. These metamorphoses, as we have seen, had different outsets in different areas. There is yet no clue on the dynamic and mechanism behind this transformation and vast abandonment. However, based on the evidence from different areas, we see that the end was not radical, but gradual. In some parts of the Southern Caucasus, in some regions in diaspora, for instance, in Godin, it has started earlier, around 2700 or 2600, and in other sites around 2500 or 2450 BCE. On the other hand, there is no one end. For some sites, it was the end of the occupation. For the others, replacement by new tradition, which in most cases include the integration and mingling. For sure, the Kura-Araxes people did not vanish all of a sudden from the whole area of the Okumene. Unfortunately, we are yet so far away from having a clear picture of the end of the Kura-Araxes tradition. Some evidence, however, may invite us to see the end not necessarily as a collapse of the Kura-Araxes tradition or social cohesion, but as a gradual transformation in settlement patterns, subsistence economy, and social organization that had started earlier. As further evidence urges, this hypothesis does not aim to generalize about the end. However, it invites us to see the end of the Kura-Araxes from a different perspective. So many thanks for your attention.